Misadventures with ME. I'm going to talk today about a technique I enjoy, multiple exposure, or specifically in-camera multi-exposure. This is just a technique I enjoy using and practicing. Sometimes I go to an area with the idea of capturing ME, sometimes it presents itself to me, and sometimes, if I'm bored, it gives me something to do. This triple headshot is one I decided to do for the talk. I was inspired by the triple head portrait of Charles I by Anthony van Dyck. These aren't competition winners, or even entries. Every shot is unique. No 10 cameras crowded around a lone tree. Every angle will be different. Each will have its own personality. Each viewer will interpret every picture differently. I'm going to illustrate this talk on ways to experiment with ME, using my own photos, and I'll explain a little about how I process them. If it's possible, I'll tell you the camera settings. I'll also give some insights into what I was thinking for each scenario. It's a fun way to get to use your camera, and sometimes a way to take pictures when there aren't good light conditions. There are, on Canon cameras, 4 ways to take multiple exposure shots. The 4 following shots are straight out of camera and were taken at f8 for 1/60th of a second from the same viewpoints. Additive. I have discovered that shots need to be underexposed if using this mode. Average. Self-explanatory. Bright. Only the lightest pixels are used in the final image. Dark. Conversely, only the darkest pixels are used in the final image. In this example, dark mode gives the most realistic view. Canon allows up to 9 shots to compose the final shot, and each shot can be with different settings. I only apply minimal alterations. Initially, I do the following: reduce highlights, increase shadows, increase whites, decrease blacks. As I've already mentioned, if it's additive and I've forgotten to do so at the time, I'll reduce the exposure. Then I check the contrast, crop if needed, use texture, clarity and saturation as necessary. Unlike if you were to combine images in Photoshop, you cannot control how they blend together, so no blend modes or opacity sliders. However, with my Canon R6 Mark II, it saves all the images as camera raw so they could be redone in Photoshop or Lightroom. The final blended image is saved as a JPEG. It's possible to change settings between each image, not just shutter and aperture, but also white balance, so you could have a shot using tungsten lighting. There are 2 relatively well-known ME techniques. Orton. Developed in the 80s by Michael Orton using 2 negatives, one in focus, one out of focus, initially for landscapes. When doing this in camera, it is best to take the focus shot first. Then it's easy to overlay colours in the out-of-focus shot. The technique gives a lovely glow. I did this image at Bagworth Heath just for this talk. The Orton effect on the birch trees has given a lovely painterly effect. Pep Ventosa. His technique, also known as in the round, was developed relatively recently and is probably the most popular. He is still practicing and can be followed on social media. This shot of an oak on the old Western Park golf course is one of my first attempts using this process, taken in 2020. The shot of a flower bed was just taken this summer. Pep Ventosa also takes shots moving towards a subject. I tried this in Birmingham, although I cheated slightly and used my camera zoom as there wasn't room to move around. Now we'll look at composites with decreasing numbers of shots. This churchyard is also an in the round with 6 shots taken on a sloping hill. I've included this as I used a radial gradient mask to process this. I rarely use masks on ME. This is one example, and I've used a linear gradient mask a couple of times in other images. Another early ME, with the camera rotated 4 times while lining up the flower centre. This time I wanted to convey the impression of more flowers than there were. Orador sur Glane. France. This is a memorial village near Limoges, where the Nazis killed 637 villagers on 10th June 1944. It's a popular visitor attraction, and as I feel uncomfortable taking pictures in this kind of environment, I thought ME would convey the visitors as ghostly and evoke the atmosphere of the village. I converted to B&W for this reason too. A longer exposure and triple shots to give some idea of the chaos there was on the water that day. This is handheld, and I used ME to attempt to show motion. This is probably one of the few times I could utilize all 9 shots to achieve a nearly full circle of lights. I used a linear gradient when processing this image. However, I mostly used 2 shots. This pic of fireweed is to illustrate another popular technique, cross-hatching. I'm not convinced by this method, as this picture has become a little too abstract. It's 2 ICM images, up, down, and across. ME can be utilized to add texture. Using the leaves gives quite nice bokeh. It's worth having a little scout around to find things that can add texture: stones, moss, rain, highlights on water, etc. ME can also be used to frame a scene, using something in the locality to concentrate the viewer's eyes. Looking up the tower frames a general view of the castle. You could also use windows, puddles, gaps in the trees, etc. The sun really lit up this red acer, so I accentuated that with a linear up-down ICM. This time I used crossways ICM to convey some of the frenetic activity around the bar area of the music festival. The same shot can be used to give a different perspective, this double sunset, and increase the colours. Taking portraits doesn't come easily to me, so this is one of only 2 portraits I've taken using ME. The head or body can be used to frame another shot that illuminates the sitter's interests, their environment, or the season, as in this shot of my husband. Or it can be a gateway to another world. This is my favourite way of utilising ME. I remembered to adjust my exposure compensation by 1/3 to give a balanced exposure, as I stood by a lake that added nothing to the view. Taken by the river saw near Abbey Park of the Cora factory. I'm going to leave you with this as I love this picture so much, it's on my wall.